Cedar Falls wasn't the kind of place where bad things happened. It was a postcard-perfect community, tree-lined streets, little white fences, and a main street that still closed on Sundays. People left their doors unlocked. Kids rode bikes until dusk. Ethan's parents, Diane and Mark Walters, had moved there 5 years earlier. Diane was a school teacher. Mark worked at the local lumber yard. They were young, hopeful, and proud of the life they'd built for their only son. Ethan was a bright, curious boy, the kind of kid who asked 1,000 questions before breakfast. He loved toy trucks, frogs, and chocolate milk. His favorite place in the world was the family's small, fenced backyard, where he spent hours driving his little red toy truck through the dirt and grass. On July 18, 1998, it was just another Saturday. Diane was folding laundry inside when the phone rang. She later said it was a call from her sister, a quick chat that couldn't have lasted more than 5 minutes. When she hung up and looked out the kitchen window, the gate at the back of the yard was open. Ethan's red truck lay on its side in the grass, and Ethan was gone. Panic set in instantly. Diane ran into the yard, shouting his name. She checked behind the shed, under the porch, in the neighbor's yard, nothing. Within minutes, she was calling 911, her voice trembling with disbelief. Police arrived fast. Within an hour, Cedar Falls turned into a search zone. Dozens of neighbors combed through backyards and wooded areas. Helicopters circled overhead. K-9 units sniffed along the fence line. It made no sense. The backyard was enclosed, except for the small gate that opened onto an alleyway. No footprints were found, no tire marks, no sign of a struggle. It was as if the boy had vanished into thin air. By nightfall, the entire town was out searching. Cars moved slowly with headlights scanning ditches. People called Ethan's name until their voices went hoarse. But nothing, no trace of him, no sound, not even a clue. Detective Laura Benton, a 20-year veteran of the Cedar Falls Police Department, took charge of the case. Her first impression? This wasn't a runaway or an accident. Someone had taken Ethan, and whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. The first suspect was a delivery driver who'd been seen in the area earlier that day. He was questioned but cleared his route, and GPS records matched up. Next was a local handyman named Harold Jensen, a quiet man in his late 50s who lived just behind the Walters property. He had a minor record trespassing and disorderly conduct years ago, but nothing serious. Detectives interviewed him, and he seemed calm, even helpful. He claimed he'd been out fishing all day, which his neighbor confirmed. Days turned into weeks. The FBI got involved. Posters with Ethan's face covered store windows and telephone poles. But every lead, every phone call, every supposed sighting led nowhere. By fall, the case had gone cold. The disappearance broke the Walters family. Mark became withdrawn, barely speaking. He stopped going to work. He sat for hours in Ethan's empty room, staring at the toys still scattered on the floor. Diane, meanwhile, refused to leave the house. She joined every search party, every interview, every prayer vigil. She even kept the porch light on every night for years, in case Ethan finds his way home. The media eventually moved on, but Cedar Falls never really recovered. The story lingered whispered at grocery stores, mentioned in church prayers. Parents started locking their doors. Children were no longer allowed to play alone outside. Ethan's name became a ghost story, a reminder that even small towns had darkness hidden beneath the surface. By 2023, the world had changed, but the Walters house remained frozen in time. Diane still lived there, now a retired woman in her 60s. The backyard was overgrown, the paint on the fence faded. She still talked about Ethan as if he were alive somewhere. She said she could feel him, close sometimes, especially when the wind rustled the old oak tree in the yard. Then, one ordinary September morning, a construction crew arrived just 2 blocks away to demolish an abandoned property. The house had belonged to none other than Harold Jensen, the same man who'd once been questioned in Ethan's disappearance. Jensen had passed away in 2011, and the house had been sitting empty ever since. As the crew began tearing up the cracked concrete patio behind the house, one of the workers, Miguel Torres, noticed something small and red buried in the dirt. He brushed away the soil and froze. It was a toy truck, old, rusted, but unmistakable, the same bright red color Diane had described all those years ago. The site was immediately turned over to police. Forensic teams arrived and began excavating the area beneath the patio. Just a few feet below the surface, They found human remains, small bones wrapped carefully in what appeared to be an old blanket. DNA tests confirmed the unimaginable. After 25 years, Ethan Walters had finally been found. The discovery reignited one of Iowa's most haunting cold cases. Detectives began reviewing old evidence, re-interviewing neighbors, and combing through Jensen's past. They found that Jensen had lived alone, with no close relatives. He was quiet but friendly, the kind of man who mowed his lawn at the same time every Saturday. But he also had a dark side. Old records revealed complaints from neighbors' children said he'd offered them candy or asked them to help with chores. Nothing illegal had ever been proven, but the pattern was there. A journal recovered from Jensen's attic painted an even more disturbing picture. He wrote about loneliness, about how innocence is fleeting, and about the day the noise finally stopped. Though the journal never mentioned Ethan by name, investigators now believe Jensen had lured the boy through the open gate that day. Forensics experts determined that the concrete patio had been poured only days after Ethan's disappearance. That same week, Jensen had rented a cement mixer, something no one found suspicious at the time. Neighbors recalled that he suddenly stopped fishing trips after that summer and began avoiding conversation. He'd sit alone on his porch, staring into space for hours. One neighbor remembered a chilling moment. I once asked him if he thought they'd ever find that little boy. He looked at me, smiled faintly, and said, "Some things are better left where they are." The case was closed posthumously, but investigators officially named Harold Jensen as Ethan's killer. When police told Diane, she didn't scream. She didn't faint. She simply closed her eyes, let out a long, shaky breath, and whispered, "I knew he never left this street." Ethan's remains were laid to rest beside his father, Mark, who had died years earlier from a heart attack, a broken man who never stopped blaming himself. The community gathered for a memorial. Old faces returned, candles flickered, and for the first time in decades, people spoke Ethan's name without fear. Cedar Falls had been haunted by his disappearance now. Finally, there was peace. The story of Ethan Walters became more than just a local tragedy. It became a symbol, a reminder of how easily evil can hide behind ordinary faces. Journalists revisited the case in documentaries and podcasts. Cold case units used Ethan's story as a teaching tool for missing persons investigations. And Diane? She still lives in the same house. She keeps Ethan's red toy truck cleaned and framed on her mantle. Every morning, she opens the back door, looks out at the yard, and whispers, "Good morning, sweetheart." For her, the story isn't just about loss, it's about finding truth, no matter how deeply it's buried.